And welcome to all of you tonight. So great to be here at the GSD, especially to talk about such a live topic, such a live wire topic. And you'll see there's a wonderful congress of speakers with us tonight. So these salons, this format is something that I've tested at MoMA for a while. This is actually I have to say 16 and a half, because the number after 16 is considered not lucky in Italy. So the 16 and a half salon. And I usually try to find topics that are very urgent to the real world, and in which our institutions, MoMA or the Harvard GSD, have some expertise, and try to see what we can do to advance a little bit the discussion. Of course, hybridity is such an important topic, especially because of the space in between what is hybrid. You know, there are many different ways to tackle hybridity. One can talk about hybrid people, but it's the spaces that provoke, engender, and continue hybridity that are sometimes the most interesting one. What do we think of when we think of hybrids today? Let's think of the stereotypes of hybrids. Well, we often think of hybrid beings. Usually it's man, machine, or artificial intelligence. And here are a few examples of the various degrees from Sophie de Oliveira Barata, who's an artist in London that makes these amazing artificial limbs that make a person from disabled to you wish you had a chance to wear my arm, don't you? Or Amy Mullins, who is a double amputee that's become an icon in fashion and in art, you see her with her cheetah legs that got her friend Oscar Pistorius disqualified for being over-abled as opposed to normally abled in the Olympic Games. Well, Pistorius has a different history going on right now, but that's when he became famous first. And then on the right-hand side, you see the legs that Alexander McQueen made for her and that she walked on the runway with a few years ago. In the middle is Hugh Herr, who is the director of the Department of Biomechatronics at the MIT Media Lab. He's working on limbs that actually behave as your limbs of yesteryear, and even better. So you can have a normal gait, you can climb stairs, and even more than that. Then we have Neil Harbison, one of the first real cyborgs. He was born without any sense of color, so he implanted a microchip in his brain that transforms color into sounds and sends sounds to his central brain, so he can actually hear a symphony of colors. Moon Ribas is a performer that has a microchip implanted that makes her feel like a seismograph, earthquakes that are happening around the world. And then, of course, we have the artificial intelligence stereotype of ex machina. So the hybrid man-machine, human-machine, is one of the cliches when we think of hybridity today. And another one is the T-shaped individual. You know, that's it's another form of hybridity that we discuss a lot. T-shaped are individuals that have a general knowledge and then a more in-depth knowledge in other disciplines that come together with this kind of necklace of T's. And in fact, the recent PopTech, the conference PopTech that happened in Camden, Maine just 2 weeks ago, was devoted to the theme of hybrids. And it was based on this idea. It was a container for hybrids of all kinds. And John Maeda, who ran it, is the hybrid par excellence. You know, if we're talking about the slash generation, he has not even slashes. He has like several lives that he's carried on, not at the same time, but one after the other. Hybridity today also comes in many different products and configuration and formats. I'm particularly enthralled by the B Corporation. As you know, if you've seen the readings, I put 2 readings about the For Benefit Corporation because I find it such an amazing hybrid of 2 things that shouldn't be together, which is corporate profit and social benefit. You know, so the whole biological idea of hybrid is 2 species that are not meant to be together, but come together sometimes with advantageous results. So the B Corporation for me is one of those instances. Then we have Fusion Kitchen, hybrid cars, the mashups that greeted you into the auditorium tonight, thanks to our great colleagues here at Harvard GSD, the idea of interdisciplinarity in universities and the cross-pollination that is now preached by any consultant, any corporate consultant you will find. So there are all these different ideas of hybridity that are bandied around sometimes without thinking about it too much. And they all come from this biological concept of putting two species together. But there's another type of hybridity that is very relevant to us today because it goes from the individual and the speciation to the creation of a different space. Harvard, in particular, is a hotbed of study of this particular form of hybridity, and it's the kind of hybridity that is based on the studies of race and on post-colonial studies in particular. What you're seeing here are kind of scary taxonomies from the 17th century. One is the casta painting, a casta painting on the left-hand side down in Spain that kind of shows all the different possible miscegenations and mixture of colonizers and colonized in South America. In the 17th and 18th century. And on the right-hand side, you have the Meyer's Lexicon, the German encyclopedia, from the end of the 20th century, and you see all of the different classifications of Asian people. So the idea that you can taxonomize and put people in their place. Chantel Blakely, who helped put together this salon, who's here at the GSD today, had a beautiful insight. She said, these look like tarot cards. What you see is what you get. If you get given that card, that's the species that you can get out or beyond, but that's what you're given. The post-colonialist studies that are here, especially represented by Homi Bhabha, I love that picture over there of Homi, talk about the colonial subject located in a place of hybridity. And his identity is formed in a liminal space that is defined by the colonizer. So the idea that there's a space where you are forced to perform as a hybrid, where you're forced to adapt until you can go beyond it, is something that's been really initiated by Homi, who's here at Harvard, and then there are other great people speaking about it, like Gayatri Spivak. And one of our speakers tonight is also going to talk about this kind of liminal space between races and amongst races. And he's going to talk in particular about the Cosmopolitan Canopy. You see there the Down Home Diner in Philadelphia, which is a place where people that are different racially and a different background come in and start talking to each other, start having common ground. So it's interesting to see how we went from separation to the idea of hybrid space in post-colonialist studies to the cities of today. The melting pot, what I'm showing there is a beautiful illustration by Sophie Blackall of the subway in New York City and the Cosmopolitan Canopies, all the way to inquiries like this by National Geographic. It was a beautiful story by Martin Scholler talking about the interracial kids of today. It was a real survey that was trying to really understand what is so intriguing in these faces and in these pages. So the U.S. Census Bureau has collected detailed data on multiracial people only since 2000. But in 10 years, that number jumped to 32%, the people that could not cross out only one square, calling themselves either Caucasian or Black or Hispanic. It jumped 32%. So this space of hybridity has to change together with how the social conditions are changing. But the interesting thing is that the last salon that I did at MoMA was about fluidity of gender and race. It was called Fluid States of America. And during that salon, I came to understand that the idea of fluidity and of social mobility through hybridity and hybrid spaces is intrinsic to the whole idea of the American dream and has to be defended and has to be nurtured. So it's not only in the corporate space, but also in the political space that we have to really be careful about nurturing it. And if you want to see the Salon on Fluidity, which is very connected to this, there's the MoMA R&D website, and the salon is there. I think you'd enjoy it. When it comes to architecture, I was looking, of course, at Complexity and Contradiction by Robert Venturi and his praise of hybridity, but in a way, this is still a biological idea of hybridity. It's about seeing how complexity is best understood by means of different styles coming together and things that are are not pure, but rather hybrid, not clean, but rather compromising, not straightforward, but rather distorted. So trying to see the interstices and the liminal spaces in the buildings and in styles. You know, that book, for those of you here who are not architects, probably there's like 5 of you, you know very well that it was a truly groundbreaking study that not only revealed so much about architecture, but also pushed the whole world of architecture forward in its search for a life after modernism. Right now, architects, designers, artists, broadcasters live in another space in between, another hybrid space. This slide that I love so much, it's by Kevin Slavin, and it's already a few years old, as you can see from the QR tag in the middle, which at this point is only used on the Acela trains, you know. But the idea is that you have the static terrestrial, the media. Also, you can see there's Maxim magazine, also that is a sign of the times. So the magazines and terrestrial media, and then digital media. But most of us live in the space in between, and that's really the space that we were trying to address with this conversation. These are 2 examples of the use of the space in between, kind of old ones, but it goes to show you that you don't have to have the best technology in order to be comfortable in between. On the left-hand side, you have a Pac-Man-like game that was played with an old Motorola cell phone in the street of the West Village, and the ghost, the Papa Samdi that wanted to eat you, was only on the Motorola cell phone, but you would run for your life because you felt that something was going to really eat you. And on the right-hand side, you see this website that was launched by the BBC that superimposed historical event onto your own home terrain. So you would see that the walk on the moon of Apollo 11 was just a walk around the block, and instead the Gulf spill, the oil spill, would cover almost all of London, if not more. So it was a way to really make you use your in-between perception. Of course, augmented reality is one of the uses of our hybrid perception of space that is pushed most forward. This is a pretty old, it's from 2010 video that was in 3D, hence the kind of like dissociated view, and it's Hiromi Ozaki in it that is demonstrating augmented reality for a colleague of yours. And instead, here at the bottom, you see the city smell research by Cecil Tolas, another kind of hybrid space in between physical and sensorial, perhaps. And synesthesia has become a way for so many people to talk about hybrid space today. Hybrid exists also in design. You know, I love Hela Jongerius and how she can take old and new Africa and Europe and merge them in hybrids that are completely seamless and very new. You know, every European designer that's gone to Africa has become enamored with a 3-legged stool with the high back, and usually they come back and they make exactly the same thing. And instead, Hela transformed it into a carbon fiber foldable stool, therefore understanding in depth the meaning of the stool and not just mimicking it. Or you see there from 2001, so a long time ago, her idea of a TV dinner of that time. So you would have a TV tray for dinner, but it would have a keyboard. So it was her way to merge that kind of idea. Art, same thing, the in-between space. Relational aesthetics, of course, it's one of the declaration of an embrace of the space in between on the side of artists. The work of art does not exist unless the viewer, participant, lover, and embracer really becomes part of it. It doesn't exist otherwise. But even in the museum, from the point of the museum, we have to embrace that space in between. This is how people view and experience art today. I don't see any problem with it, and so and the same don't many of my colleagues, but there are some people that are still really upset by this in-betweenness and this mediation. So hybrid space coming from this idea of merging of different worlds, especially the digital and physical, is one of the aspects that are most important for architects. So it seems that hybridity has helped us get through so many different spots, difficult spots. You know, the hybridity for post-colonialism, hybridity for post-humanism with the cyborg idea, hybridity for postmodernism with the idea of, you know, from Venturi and Scott Brown, and also what we see today with the hybrid space of digital and physical. So Is hybrid really a panacea? Is it something that is going to cure all and help all? Is it the real evolutionary advantage? Not necessarily. And to discuss this tonight, we have a great group of speakers. And we're going to start with Elijah Anderson, who's a great urban ethnographer and a professor of sociology at Yale. Then after him will be Éric de Broche-de-Combe. I'm sure that you know him because he teaches here at the GST, but he's a graphic designer, he's an architect, but also he's a true in-between person, not only because he commutes once a week from France, but also because he is able to really embrace the two spaces and bring them together, also with his music career. Then will come Jane Fulton-Suri, who is the creative director and also one of the founding principals of IDEO, who has been bringing the social sciences into design. She was among the very, very first people to embrace the need to have social sciences within design practice. And last but not least, Alexa Clay. You see her there in character with her Amish alter ego. She'll tell us more about it. She just published The Misfits Economy, which is a great book that speaks about being a misfit today in the workplace. So I would like to invite Professor Elijah Anderson first, and after that we will all sit together after the 4 presentations, and I'm sure that you have all read the reading list that I sent you because it was so short and concise, so we will be able to have a conversation after that. Thank you very much, Professor Anderson.